Welcome to the Wild Ones Pro Show with me, Jimmy, producer Emily.
Hello.
And pro cycling journalist Katie Madwick.
Hello.
You join us at the end of Stage 8, which ended up having one hell of a spicy ending.
So thanks to Garmin and Van Rysel for supporting the show and helping us to bring you these daily highlights. Now let's get into them. It was a bit of a textbook sprint stage today. Basically, nothing happened for the first 100 kilometres. Then we got a massive bunch sprint at the end. So Katie, please could you take us through what happened today?
Sure, yes. So after a very quiet day out, though one which it must be said was ridden at quite a high pace, I think they were all in a hurry to get back to the buses, the tension picked up with around 15 kilometres to go as teams began to organise themselves ahead of the sprint finale. There were some terribly timed mechanical issues for Tim Merlier of Soudal Quickstep and for Groupama FDJ's sprinter Paul Penwet, both of whom had to chase back through the traffic after that. And up front, the bunch rode down the lone survivor from the late breakaway, Total Energies Mathieu Bergadeau. They reeled him in with just under 9 kilometres remaining, and then it was a high-speed chase for the safe zone for the GC riders, at which point, when they reached there, Jonas Vingegaard waved them on.
It was, two things. One, it was like when you're riding down a country lane and there's a car behind you and you can see around the corner, you know it's clear, and you wave them on so that they're not just stuck behind you. But also it was a striking contrast between how Visma wanted to play this stage and how UAE wanted to play it, because Pogačar was right at the back already. He had no interest to be in the front, whereas Visma were being more traditional and getting their GC guy into the safe space first, and then he passes through the bunch. But it's interesting that he was like, why hasn't anyone come past me? So waves them on.
Yeah, it was almost as if they're expecting the GC guys to want to get involved in everything now, even the bunch sprints. Jonas, go for a bunch sprint. Why not? After that, it was Jordi Meeus was the next sprinter with a mechanical issue. He's a Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe rider. A nightmare for some of these sprinters, knowing they'll miss out on that sprint finish after a day built for them. It was Alpecin de Koenig who led into the roundabout. They did a 180 around the roundabout, which we'll talk about later. They're riding for CADE Groves today. But it was Bahrain who led across the bridge after the fast downhill section before Little Trek took up the pace setting at the front. They had the most prominent position, heading under the Flamme Rouge into the final kilometre. Despite quite a physical run-in, Jonathan Milan was able to find his way to his first Tour de France stage win after a powerful final sprint, with Wout van Aert close behind in second and CADE Groves third.
Yay, Wout van Aert! No, he didn't win the stage. I must talk about the winner first. Jonathan Milan, I will go out on a limb here and say his first of many stage wins at the Tour de France for him, I think. He is so explosive. It was sad not to see Tim Merlier there. And obviously Jasper Philipsen as well. We've almost been denied that sort of sprint royale thing. But, you got to give it to Milan. He's just so incredibly powerful. He also picked up maximum sprint points today because he also won the intermediate sprint too.
Yeah, he's moving back into the green jersey lead by rights. He was wearing the green jersey anyway for today, but Pogačar was the owner of it, but not anymore.
Was it the penultimate roundabout? I think it was, wasn't it? Or at least one of the handful of roundabouts at the latter stage of the race. CADE Groves went way too hot into it and nearly took Milan out. And, well, I'm sure more riders would have come down as well. So it's quite fortunate that it looked like it was hip contact, which if you've been in a sprint, you'll know you bounce off rather than come down with in most cases. So yeah, CADE Groves went in way, way, way hot. Looks like there was contact. Everyone stayed upright, and then Milan had to put the burners on to get back on the wheel and not lose advantage of that lead out.
Yeah, it looked like Groves was trying to get on Van der Poel's wheel. Van der Poel was the lead out man for Groves today, and he sort of got himself in a bit of an awkward position in that. But as you say, yes, everyone thankfully did stay upright. I don't know whether there's an argument for maybe Groves should have been leading out Van der Poel. I don't know whether that would have changed it, but it would be interesting, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it is interesting. It's fascinating that they've lost their key sprinter, Jasper Philipsen, and yet they still do have two options. Obviously, we don't think of Mathieu van der Poel as like a pure bunch sprinter, but he's obviously extremely fast and I think he's going to look at that green jersey competition and think that he might want to have a crack at it. And yeah, they've got options. They could go for Groves, they can go for Van der Poel. It just didn't work out for them today.
Do you not feel they seem a bit lost now, though? It kind of, every time you see them building up in these moments, it's kind of like even they are not sure what's going to happen or who they're doing it for. And they just seem like they maybe didn't have a plan B.
Yeah, you sometimes get that with teams that are sprint heavy. Maybe if somebody has a bad day or suddenly doesn't have the legs at the last minute and they just don't have time to communicate, actually you go, maybe there was an element of that going on. Maybe it's possible that Groves was a bit shaken by what happened at the roundabout and felt a bit off, but he came through in third, so I suppose it's not too bad, but he was way back. The lead two were away and clear. And for me, actually, that is one of the stories of the day, really, is Wout van Aert's sprint. Like we talked about Pogačar coming only 16 seconds behind Remco Evenepoel in the time trial, Evenepoel being such a specialist, and Pogačar coming that close to him over that distance was a really huge talking point. It's, for me, the similar story with Wout van Aert today, coming through behind Milan, who's such a powerful sprinter. And you could see those two are well ahead of everybody else. And Wout hasn't sprinted yet this tour, and it's great to see him in that kind of form. We've got another sprint finish tomorrow. So, yeah, interesting times. Good to see Wout with the legs to go with Milan nearly all the way, and he was only just a bit behind.
It was good to see. However, also, not taking anything away from Milan, it was a powerful finish. He has been one of the favourites for that green jersey going into that tour, and he is just so dominant. We didn't see Binium Girmay there basically at all in that. I
was desperate to bring this up. It's not in the notes, but I was sitting here going, I feel like it's ready to have this conversation. I think he's done. I think the Philipsen crash has got so in his head, he doesn't want to race because he's hardly contesting.
Well, we saw that in the intermediate sprint. We mentioned Milan had maximum points. There almost wasn't that much of a contest there at all, was there? Which is more normal for an intermediate sprint. In the first couple of days, we saw everything so tense, and I feel like everyone got a bit spooked by that Philipsen crash, and everyone's backed off a little bit.
Yeah, it does seem to be the case. The intermediate sprints haven't been a contest. It's almost as if we've seen it. Yes, we saw it with Biniam Girmay, as Jimmy mentioned. He's backed off a couple of times and just kind of gone, you know what, I'm just not going to go for that. Whether it's because he can see that Milan is there and has that power and just doesn't feel like he has the edge, and so he's conserving his matches, to go back to our conversation about conserving your energy, maybe it's that. But yeah, he should be up there and contesting these finishes. He wasn't very well positioned today, which is disappointing for a team who have so much invested in their sprint lead out. Like, if you look at their team on paper, like 4 of them are sprinters in addition to Binny, pretty much. So for them to not be able to dial that in is a bit disappointing for them, and they'll be going back to the drawing board ahead of tomorrow for sure.
I think this is one I want to open out to you guys watching and listening the show. If you're watching it, not if you're listening, because you can't comment if you're listening. If you're watching it, get in the comments and let us know if you think that Biniam Girmay's head has gone and isn't going to be one of the lead sprint competitors in the rest of this race.
I'm going to add some context to that just by saying that in the points classification after that stage, Binny is still sitting in third. He's on 124 points versus Milan's 192 points. So, we've seen Milan jump 70 points today. So if Binny does have a good day, that could all change as well. So, maybe early days still.
Oh, yeah, of course it's early days.
And number 2 there is Pogačar. I just sort of missed him out there. One final thing I want to touch on in this sprint before we move on. We did also see a little bit of shoulder barging from Jonathan Milan towards Mathieu van der Poel, didn't we?
Yeah, it was a bit physical, a bit of argy-bargy coming through. Milan is a very physical rider. He's a big guy and he's fast, so he wants to find his own way through the traffic. Pushing people out of the way isn't the right way to do it. We'll find out later whether or not he's been penalised for it. And I think, on balance, I'd say it wasn't anything too sinister. It's difficult to say, really. Everyone's going to have their own opinion on it. But all we wanted to point out was if it was Jasper Philipsen, I think people would be, taking to their keyboards up in arms, because Philipsen, as we know, has a reputation for being a bit physical, for using his shoulders, and Milan hasn't built up quite that reputation yet, so perhaps he's going to fly under the radar a bit, but it'll be interesting to see if ASO have anything to say about it.
Yeah, I think based on what we have seen people be penalised for recently, there are some questions in that sprint today. However, maybe the difference between it is Philipsen has definitely caused some nasty crashes. I'm sure Milan has in the past, but he hasn't in this race thus far. Or am I forgetting something?
No, but I don't think they base it on that. Like we saw Edward Toons being reprimanded for a regular sprint. We watched those two side by side, and we thought, having seen the part that Toons was involved in, it looked like he had done more. So maybe there's a possibility it will just fly under the radar, and it is just a nature of the sprint.
If we were talking about this exact sprint 20 years ago, we would be saying Milan is a sprint master.
Yeah, exactly.
Because he was riding everyone's wheels. He doesn't even need his own lead out at times. We see him pushing people off their own lead outs to make sure he gets the wheel. And thus far hasn't caused an accident, maybe, possibly. But his technique is fantastic.
Yeah, he is.
Whether
great.
you like it or not, or whether it's safe or not safe, he is a master of those moments.
There's an argument for, retroactive punishment. Like if something went wrong, then you look at it again and go, actually, he was doing something wrong. But because he's getting away with it, because he is so good at it. And also there's a difference between, you see him coming through and he kind of knocks the Israel Premier Tech rider it looks like he sort of just bumps his shoulder a little bit, but in doing so finds his own space. But he's bumping the Israel riders out into space. He's not closing the door on him into a barrier, for example. So perhaps he's making decisions, weighing up risk and reward and thinking, actually, I can probably get away with this and I'm going to get clear space ahead of me to sprint now. But it's really tough to call. I feel like I'm on unsteady ground with sprinting kind of protocols and when it comes to what is okay and not okay.
Thankfully, it isn't our job.
Yes, I'm so grateful that I don't have to.
But also, can I say, there wasn't a crash.
No.
It was actually a really nice, it was a good sprint to watch. There was loads of action. It was tense. It was what's going to happen, what's not going to happen. It was a shame we had people missing, but it was a great sprint.
Totally. So this was the first of two sprint stages that the ASO has scheduled for this weekend. I did see some rumbling and some moaning online that they have scheduled potentially two really boring stages when people actually have the time off to watch them.
I personally would very comfortably argue that it is a blessing because if it's a proper sprint stage like it is today and it's going to be tomorrow, nothing's going to happen for the first 3.5 hours, probably 4 hours, and then you've got 10-15k of just pure action. So you can still go out, get a lovely morning bike ride in, get back, have a shower, have some food, crack the TV on, last 15k, diamond.
Yeah, and if you're living somewhere in the world where this race happens overnight and you feel like you're always FOMO catching up in the morning, then you haven't missed out for the last couple of days. Just watch our stuff. We'll tell you the main stuff and then get on with your day. Simple as. On to some other parts of the race that were maybe not as exciting, but noteworthy nonetheless. Injury update after the nasty crash yesterday. Joao Almeida did roll out this morning, albeit with a fractured rib. Toughest man in the peloton, maybe. Bandage on his elbow too. I just think that if he has been given the all clear to ride, he is going to get on that bike, isn't he?
I'm sorry to do this, but Geraint Thomas is in the peloton, so if you're looking for the toughest in the peloton, he's ridden with a broken back.
Yeah, true.
I'm sure there's there's probably a huge list of active injuries that people have ridden through that they absolutely categorically shouldn't have.
Fine, toughest man in the peloton in the past 12 hours.
Yeah, okay, fine.
Let's settle on that.
Also, Louis Barret of Intermarché Wanty was also in that crash. He was covered in bandages too today, but he did start the race. Sadly for Jaco Alula's Eddie Dunbar, he had to abandon the race. He saw what was happening in the front, put the brakes on, but couldn't stop in time and had to abandon, unfortunately. We know that Bahrain victorious rider Jack Haig didn't finish yesterday, and his team confirmed that he did suffer a concussion, so sending Jack all our best wishes for his recovery. Their other rider, Santiago Buitrago, who went down, had abrasions and contusions on his thigh, apparently, but was able to continue today, although I can't imagine that would have been a comfortable day out for him.
Extensive road rash and riding bikes in 30-degree heat. Ugh.
No.
If you want an idea about how chilled GC teams really were today, just under 100 kilometres to go, the UAE team radio flashes up on the screen, delivering updates about some other races around Europe. First of all, we heard about Özge Zigart's progress at the Giro Women. She rides for AG Insurance Soudal and was putting in an excellent performance on the Queen stage today. She also just happens to be Tadej Pogačar's girlfriend, so he was asking how she was getting on overall. And they delivered news of Isaac Del Toro's third victory at the Tour of Austria too. So, you know, just got time to fill in the sports results while we're waiting around in the bunch.
I heard he wanted updates because he was watching Wimbledon. Is Wimbledon on right now? I don't even know.
It is.
Yeah.
On, yeah.
I heard he was watching it on his phone whilst riding, but he wanted to know what was going on in those as well because he couldn't split screen it.
So very quickly, we did mention it was a surprisingly uncrashy stage, considering a sprint stage. Thank God. However, at 19 kilometres to go, Jonas Rutsch came down hard. Not sure exactly what caused it. We couldn't see from the angle we had, but Movistar's Aina Rubio sort of was just behind, tried to put on the brakes, but did kind of ride over him in that process. Rutsch was checked over by medics and was eventually allowed to continue, albeit with a ripped jersey. He did look in a bad way at first, and I thought it was going to be really bad, but he did get up and carry on. So fingers crossed for him that those injuries aren't too bad. Next up, we are going to give it a little shout out. The Breakaway. We did see one, didn't we, Katie?
Eventually, yes. It took 100 kilometres to establish itself, and that wasn't in the way that the Breakaway took so long to be established in the past 2 days. That was just pure fight and battle. Today they just didn't go. Nobody went. It was a cross headwind day as well, which makes it even more discouraging for a Breakaway. But yeah, I think that the pressure of the last 2 days had gotten to the riders and everyone just needed a bit of recovery. Finally, though, we saw a plucky pair of riders make a break, and it was Total Energies' Matteo Vescher and Mathieu Bergado who made a move. They had at most around 55 seconds of a gap. It was always going to be a doomed effort.
Yes, but an effort nonetheless, and I think that there's something to be said for that. We saw the DSs speaking to them on the team radio, giving them a bit of advice. They said, listen, if they want to jump on anything that moves, let them. We have the right to race. The them they're referring to is some of the larger teams, the Vismas and the UAE, who are really trying to control the race and have so much so far. Yes, they didn't manage to hold their lead, but, you know, we love this attitude. You know, we are now a third into this race. Teams have to keep doing something here. You know, there is, as we've talked about numerous times, there is such a dominance going on, but that doesn't mean you just have to roll over and accept it.
Yeah, there's 23 teams at this race, and so far 18 have nothing to show for their efforts. And we're a third of the way through, just over a third of the way through now. You could argue they're throwing away chances by not trying something. Mm-hmm. Yes, we know it's difficult. Yes, it's, you know, I don't know what the odds are. You can't really quantify the odds. 1 in 100, 1 in 1,000, whatever. The odds are so high, they're stacked against them on a sprint stage like today. But we've seen breakaways go all the way on sprint stages. It's not unheard of. Why not try something? You know, why not just pick a day when obviously no one else is interested and send a few riders up the road and just see what happens. You just never know. We've seen Casper Asgreen do it twice in the past couple of years. It's possible. It is possible. Today they all just obviously needed a rest, I guess.
Yeah, this is it. I mean, people say Pogačar, UAE's dominance is making the sport boring, but there are over 100 other riders in that peloton, and I think it's the jobs of the team managers to create these chances. You know what I mean? Like, otherwise, what they're doing here, they're just up for a jolly around France. And you could say that they're saving it for, they don't want to spend all their matches now, they want to save something for the final week. But if they're all going to be doing that, then there's even less chances to make a name for yourself.
Yeah. To counterpoint the idea about Visma and UAE making it boring, I think the problem is that those two teams are so head and shoulders ahead of everyone in terms of the resources that they have. And their rivalry is what's defining this race. It's crushing out everything else. Nothing else can happen. So because of that rivalry and the way it's unfolded over the last 2 days, everyone is exhausted. So it still is sort of Tadej Pogačar's dominance making it boring, but in a completely different way to him just winning everything. It's that push and pull between teams that have way more money than any other teams that are able to keep the pressure so high for so long that's just making everyone else say, actually, you know what, we've earned this day off. I kind of get it, but yeah, it's difficult. It's a difficult place to be in.
I get it as well, and I'm absolutely being an armchair expert in saying do something. I understand it's hard, and I understand teams are trying, but
it's a horribly complex answer, really, isn't it?
It is.
Because yes, we want to see breakaways because it's exciting and fun, and it's nice seeing whether it's going to hold or not hold. But there's so many levels happening here. There's riders which are thinking, well, this might be the last or only opportunity I get to ride this, so I just want to make sure I finish, so I can say I finished the Tour de France. Because it's not a given to start it and finish it, as we know. Some people want to make sure they finish so that they know they can, so that sponsors know that they're capable of doing it. Abrahamsen is a really interesting case study for the opposite, in that he was so aggressive and plucky and threw himself out there last year that he got so much attention that I know who he is. I now follow him on Instagram, and he's probably one of the few pro cyclists I do, just because of how he approached last year's Tour de France. And we know more about Uno X, and we know more about their sponsors, and we know more about the team because he just was an interesting character at that point in the race. So yeah, obviously it has a lot of value in some ways. But
what it proves is you haven't got to win a stage to win the hearts and minds of fans. That was something Katie said earlier.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point to make, because only one person can win each day and there's 200 guys there. But that doesn't mean that cycling fans only know one person each day. Like you know who's gone out in the break and given everything, and you remember those guys who wear the hearts on their sleeve, who give it all. You know, yesterday we had Owen Costew in Brittany, like going up that climb at the local rider, and he will remember that day forever. We all know his name now. Teams will be looking at him going, he's got some power, that's really good. Same with Kevin Vauquelin on other days. We need guys like that who just want to seize the moment and take that opportunity. But as Jimmy says, they've all got their own agendas. You know, they could be looking at a stage next week that they've targeted and they're saving everything for that. You've got the team managers shouting in the ears going, just take it easy, you know, let your body recover, we'll go again tomorrow. We might see a massive blow up for the breakaway tomorrow. I mean, I don't expect it, but again, we just never know how it's going to unfold. But it's frustrating as a fan watching it, just thinking one of you could be our next favourite rider, you know, just give it a shot.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we just need to let the dull days be the dull days so that we get the good days in the future. But do you know what I think it really needs? More team alliances.
I'm fairly certain officially it's not, the rules say you're not allowed to work with other teams. Obviously, when there's breakaways and things like that, we know they are technically working together, but I guess it's the what's the word I'm thinking of? Not predetermined.
Premeditated.
Premeditated teams coming together, I think, is officially not allowed. However, why not?
There's a great example of it actually happening, though. There was a Belgian alliance in Paris-Nice a few years ago, and this was premeditated because they told the media afterwards that they'd planned to do this. It was a flat sprint stage. They expected, like today, that nothing really would happen. And so a group of Belgian riders got together and just stormed off the front. And it was very funny listening to the commentary, Ned Boulting kind of suddenly realising, hang on, these guys are all Belgian. And it was a bunch of big Belgian rouleurs, like big guys that could stay away for a while. We had the likes of Philippe Gilbert, and actually Victor Campenaerts was up there that day, about 8 of them, and it was just a funny thing to see. But they had sorted that out beforehand just to do something. And this is the kind of thing we're talking about, you know, just try something different. But maybe there's so much tension and nerves on these riders, so much pressure on the shoulders that maybe they're just too tense and don't want to put their noses in the wind when they don't have to. It's really difficult.
Immediately thinking about it then, so I haven't put any thought into this, there could also be an argument that the sport has got so fast that the amount of energy you would have to expend to actually get away, if it isn't a big break, is just like astronomical now. Like astronomical.
That is the point. Today, with the cross headwind, and I mentioned at the top of the show that the Little Trek, they had Quinn Simmons up front and Intermarché, who were riding for Binium. Both were driving the pace so high that exactly what you say, it would have been really, really difficult. It wasn't like they were sitting. There was a day, was it stage 3, the one that ended really badly, where they were just all sitting and having a nice chat and a little coffee ride, and they rolled in really late. Today was quite brisk, the pace, and I think that it's exactly that it made it very difficult, I think, for anyone to get away. So, yeah, you would have to expend a heck of a lot of energy.
Well, in other news, there has been more Visma UAE argy-bargy, and this time it's over water bottles. So in one of yesterday's feed zones, Pogačar appeared to push Visma's Matteo Jorgensen, which caused him to drop a bottle. Pog was asked about that this morning, and he argued that he was just trying to make space because apparently the Visma riders were blocking his line to his own soigneur, so he couldn't get his own bottle. Whether that was intentional or accidental, we can only speculate. But he said that apparently it isn't the first time they've pulled something like this. He said they do this a lot of times, coming in front of you in the feed zones like they're the only ones having bottles there. Sometimes you have to be patient and stay on the wheel when you're trying to take bottles and pay everyone respect. So, again, it's kind of much of a muchness. Is it something? Is it nothing? It's just two rival teams here. Tensions are high. Things are getting in the head.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's getting a bit tetchy between the teams. The Visma DS Grisha Nim bit back at Pogačar and kind of said it's BS, basically. That, you know, he said, I think this is a direct quote, we're not going to roll out the red carpet for today, Pogačar. Basically, he can get his own bottles and it's nothing to do with us, kind of thing. It's just getting a bit tetchy, isn't it?
It is.
Getting on it. You know, it's like when you're staying with someone that you haven't stayed with for a while and you get in each other's way and you start to get on each other's nerves after a few days. I think it's just that kind of, you know, they've been together for a week and a bit now and they're getting fed up with each other.
I would imagine this happens all of the time, but because it's Visma and Pog, it's got people's attention.
Okay, well, I guess it's time to do our fluff up of the day. I feel like this is your initiation, Katie, into the CADE Media family, because you're not really in until you've had your own fluff up. And I mean, there's some contention over this.
I don't think it is a fluff up.
Well, this is the contention. There's contention over Katie's stage preview yesterday. We were talking about the route where the riders basically come out, go around a roundabout, and then come back on the same junction in the opposite direction. You described that, I think, as they go 360 degrees around the roundabout.
I think it was 360 degree U-turn. And some people pointed out that perhaps if you U-turn, you actually only go 180 degrees. Right, so the difference is, I've thought extensively on this.
Have you?
The turn is 180 degrees because you're coming back on yourself. However, did you see the size of that roundabout?
It was a perfect circle.
If you put a protractor, I think that's what it's called, on top of that roundabout and marked how many degrees were travelled to turn around on themselves, it would have been about 345 degrees. So they had to travel nearly 360 degrees to turn around. So I say this isn't a fluff up, but screw you guys.
I'm on the fence. I'm not getting it. I am Switzerland.
I'll take one for the team on this.
You said 180 when we first talked through it today, so you've kind of covered both bases there.
Yeah, I did, yeah.
The Wild Ones Pro Show is supported by Garmin.
And we are in some really good company because Garmin also supports some of the very best riders in the Tour de France and the Tour de France Femme.
Yeah, they work with teams like Visma Lease Bike, Soudal Quickstep, SD Works Pro Time, FDJ Suez, and many more.
And because Garmin provides these teams with trainers, head units and wearables, they've got access to mountains of incredible data.
And they're going to share some of that data with us throughout the coming stages. So we'll get a really interesting insight into the physical demands of the most prestigious bike races in the world.
So please stay tuned for that. And once again, thanks to Garmin for supporting the show.
How would you like to win a Van Rysel RCR-F 105 Di2 worth £5,000?
I would love to. I've ridden that bike. It is proper good.
Well, sorry, Jimmy, you can't. But one of our UK listeners will, thanks to our sponsor, Van Rysel.
That's class. The RCR-F is literally a Tour de France race bike.
Yeah, the official bikes of Decathlon, AG2R, Le Mondial.
The 105 version has the same grade of carbon that the pros ride.
So to enter the draw to win this bike, click the link in our description. You must be a UK resident, age 18 or over, and T's and C's apply. One winner will be chosen by Van Rysel and contacted by them a week after the draw closes at midnight on August 4th. I sound like one of those radio adverts, don't I?
No, it wasn't fast enough. So good luck, and thanks to Van Rysel for supporting the Wild Ones Pro Show.
Right, shall we end with the Stage 9 preview, tomorrow's stage?
Yeah, so if today was a slightly more complicated finish for the sprinters, tomorrow is as straightforward as it gets. The race is 174.1 kilometres in length and begins in Chinon in the Loire Valley in the west of France. The route takes the peloton east via an early intermediate sprint. But with 1,400 metres of altitude, it's set to be another long flat stage, and if today was anything to go by, we may be in for another quiet day, so get out on your bikes, everyone. The finish in Châteauroux has been used 5 times as a stage finish at the Tour de France, and it's being renamed Cavendish City in honour of the Manx missile this year, who won 3 of those 5 finishes, including taking his first victory at the Tour there in 2008.
Sorry, is it actually being renamed?
I'm not sure it's been renamed for like forever.
Oh,
They've put signs up.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sure that it's not, maps aren't going to be reproduced with Cavendish City.
Yeah, I feel like the French would hate that, wouldn't
Yeah.
they?
Well, I think the Tour de France are doing like PR stuff with Cav this year.
Right.
So I think this is part of that. Like he did a load of press beforehand about, look, I've got my own city in France, blah, 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 blah.
I think the people of Châteauroux won't mind because I think they've sort of taken him into their hearts. He does love the race and, you know, sort of an honorary Frenchman, I feel.
Okay, fine. Very diplomatic. Sorry to interrupt you there.
No, it's fine. But, you know, we think about Cavendish sprints, it perhaps gives us a hint of the kind of finish that we might be expecting tomorrow. So it's a long, sweeping sort of boulevard-style sprint with a dead straight final kilometre and flat. So it'll appeal to Tim Miller and the pure sprinters, and it should give us a really explosive showdown.
There is a very significant issue with this Stage 9 preview.
Really?
Yeah.
What's that?
You haven't mentioned that they're going to pass through one of the greatest wine regions in the entire world.
I'm so sorry.
That being Châteauneuf-du-Pape. So the most important thing about tomorrow is intermediate sprint. Have a look at the best vineyards in the world on the cameras.
And then perhaps enjoy some in the evening if you have a bottle.
Great. Well, I really thought this episode might be 5 minutes today because it was such an eventful tour. Yet we've talked for 36 minutes. By the time we cut it down, it'll be a little bit shorter, but good job.
7 minutes.
And honestly, I've tried so hard to hold back on the yay Wout talk, but
We'll save that for when he actually wins, which he will in this form. I feel it.
I mean, maybe I need to get my t-shirt back on, give him some good vibes going through. But yes, join us back here tomorrow and we will talk through that stage. Enjoy the rest of your evening /morning/afternoon and goodbye.
See ya.
Bye.